Today I've traveled over 1,000 kilometers to the frigid Arctic north of Canada to test. Wait. Okay, well, it might not be super remote. I've come to northern Alberta to my girlfriend's parents' backyard to test out some winter camping gear. I want to see how stuff's going to perform.
I'm a quilt user, and quite often people say you can't use quilts into frigid temperatures. With conditions forecast to get below 30 degrees Celsius, I'm really been pushing the limits of myself and my gear.
I'd love to do some winter backpacking trips in the Canadian Rockies, but the problem is I don't know how some of my gears can perform. The issue is with testing gear like this is you need somewhere safe to bail out. That's why I'm using a backyard right now, because if my gear is too cold, I can just walk inside and call it quits for the night there. If I was in the backcountry kilometers away, that could be a really dangerous situation where I have to hike out. But that being said, let's go have a look at some of my gear. I'm going to run down of everything I have and some of the concerns I have with my sleep system. So I only own quilts. That was part of the challenge with this, is I was curious how well our quilts can perform in these frigid temperatures. Two quilts I'm actively using these days are both from Enlightened Equipment. This is the Enlightened Equipment Revelation, -12 degrees Celsius or 10 degrees Fahrenheit. The second quilt I have is the Enlightened Equipment Revelation Apex,
40 degrees Fahrenheit or 5 degrees Celsius. According to a recent blog post by Enlightened Equipment, with combining the two quilts together, this should take me down to -20 degrees Fahrenheit, which is -29-ish Celsius. One of my concerns with using quilts is drafts. When I toss and turn around when it's this cold out of temperature, you do not want to be having drafts or it's going to wake you up. Both my quilts are Enlightened Equipment's wide width. I'm slightly concerned about my top quilt not being wide enough for both layers and could affect things with drafts.
One of the concerns I had with my sleep system is how am I going to deal with moisture?
During the night, your body perspirates moisture from its pores. That causes the moisture to travel outwards into your sleep system. Once it reaches either the dew point or the frost point near the exterior of your sleep system, it will condensate or freeze.
With 950 full power down, it just does not perform that well when it has moisture in it.
Now this is where my top quilt comes into play, the Enlightened Equipment Apex.
So the Apex is made of synthetic material. The nice thing about using synthetic is that it's really good at dealing with moisture.
When synthetic material gets wet, it doesn't lose its loft like down does. Plus, it dries out significantly quicker than down.
Having the synthetic quilt really helps deal with the moisture levels way better. When sleeping in extreme cold conditions, moisture is something you have to really pay attention to and deal with. If I was going for a single night trip, it'll probably be fine, but the problem is as your trip goes on throughout the multiple nights, it's not going to perform as good as it was on the first night. So if your coldest night is a few nights into the trip, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. To add a few extra degrees to my sleep system, a sea to summer reactor is a good way to do it. Definitely adds a few degrees of warmth. I've used this particular one for years now. What I would be interested in getting is a Alpha Direct fleece liner. It could potentially be a little bit lighter and add significant more warmth to it. I like it too because when I have a bunch of layers on inside my sleeping quilt, my arms want to flop off to the side, so this helps hold them in a bit. It's kind of like a sleeping bag in a sense, but acts as like a layering system for your sleep system. For a sleeping pad, I just use the trusty Thermarest X-Therm. So when you're getting down to extreme cold temperatures, most people commonly use a closed cell foam pad underneath their Thermarest. Now, the coldest I've ever used my X-Therm is down to -5 degrees Celsius, so I wasn't too sure how it was going to be once I start encroaching these into the -30 degree temperature range. I've seen reports online where people have used it to those temperatures and they haven't needed a closed cell foam pad underneath it, but that's with the newer NXT version and I have the last generation version. So I just wanted to see how it was going to test up, and I just inflated it like it was a rock hard brick. It wasn't the most comfortable thing to sleep on. One thing that I didn't know that would be an issue is that if you blow in with your mouth, the inflation valve can freeze. I was going to bring my sleeping pad inside, but from what I learned this past summer, that if you let your sleeping pad heat up and expand, it could pop. Now with a 50-degree fluctuation of the temperature, that's asking for this thing to pop. Now what can happen is when you blow on the inflation valve with your mouth, that's going to cause moisture to get inside the sleeping pad. What I had to do is just pour some lukewarm water on it. That was enough to thaw it out just to twist it open. Got it. So for the pad straps, I use the Enlightened Equipment's loop style one. When you buy a Enlightened Equipment quilt, it comes with two different types of pad straps. There's a loop style one and there's one that slides directly underneath you. It's supposed to go between you and your sleeping pad. I use both the loop pads from each of my quilts when I purchase them, and I just find that that's the best way for me to get snug and secure. So that's what I like to do to keep the drafts down and under control. For a pillow, I decided to use my trusty Mac Deluxe pillow. It's got a little bit of foam pellets on the top, so I figure that help keep it warm. I've never really heard of anyone else using this pillow, and I definitely have not seen anyone use it in these sort of temperatures, so I had no clue how it was going to perform. But from what I've seen online is that your pillow isn't really somewhere that really affects how warm you're going to be. You're not going to notice the cold. Okay, now let's talk about the clothing, what I'm wearing to sleep. So for my base layer, aka the Nexus skin layer, it's going to be a polyester layers on my top and my bottom. This is going to stick with my tried and true Amazon Basic Sun hoodie up top, and then for my pants, I'm going to use the Patagonia and Terrebonne pants. Both of these are a polyester layer. I see a lot of people like to use merino wool, but I don't own a merino wool base layer.
I don't even know if it's necessarily better. What I've seen online seems like polyester might be the best way to go. So that's why I'm opting with this. And plus, this is just what I own. On top of that polyester base layer, I'm gonna have a thicker fleece layer over top of that. Up top, I'm gonna use my Matte Pack Alpha Direct layer. The Matte Pack Alpha Direct is uses 90 meters per square, 90 something. It uses 90 Alpha Direct up top. And then for my pants, I'm using cheap grid fleece Walmart long johns. They're only 16 bucks Canadian and they're pretty warm. For on my hands, I just have these liner gloves from Decathlon. I don't think I need a whole lot around my hands at night. Around my feet, I just have some mid-weight Darn Tough hiking socks. Then over top of that, I have Farpoint Alpha Direct socks. So one thing when you're using a quilt, as everyone knows, they don't have hoods on them. I had to figure out something to keep my head warm. What I did was I just went with this fleece Balaclava from New Balance. I wish it was a little bit bigger because it was kind of tight and pushing on my nose quite a bit. Just wore it like yay. And then I would start taking my hoods. I was rocking my Amazon Basic Sun hoodie, so I tossed that on over top. And then my Alpha Direct layer over top of that. Then the good old Walmart toque. That went on over top of everything. My idea was we kind of with this little bit of fabric hanging over from the Sun hoodie, it caused a little bit of an air. But what actually ended up happening was that moisture from my breath would kind of shoot up as I was breathing. It would hit along my Sun hoodie hood here. And the moisture would accumulate all along it, and then it would start to drip all along my face. It's still close enough to the point where it wasn't freezing. It's kind of annoying. I was getting waterboarded throughout the night. This is all I needed to keep my head out and keep it warm throughout the night. In combination with having my mech pillow, the little foam pellets there, my head wasn't cold at all. Especially with the Balaclava up though, like this is definitely not the most comfortable way to sleep. If it was a little bit bigger, I'd enjoy it more. Part of backyard filming, some dogs. What would have been really nice is if I had that light and equipment Torrid hood. That would have been really nice to stick over top, and then I wouldn't have to worry about all the moisture. The reason why I'd like the light and equipment Torrid hood is because it's made of synthetic. Just seeing how much moisture comes off your face in the surrounding area, having down as your hood would not work out very well. The down would lose all of its loft throughout the night, so having synthetic would be way better of an option. The problem is it's $100 and it's just another thing to purchase. So, but this worked good enough for me. This is a little bit of a floppy setup and it's a little constrictive on my face. So like I said, one of the MVP products from my gear setup is probably this Nalgene. Nalgene is an HDPE Nalgene. They're a lot lighter than the regular Nalgenes. This one in particular comes as like 106 grams. But the trick is what you can do is you put boiling water inside of the Nalgene, do it up, then I toss mine inside of a couple socks, and I toss this inside my sleep insulation, and this keeps you nice and toasty. It stays pretty warm too, like there's still warm water in it after sleeping with it for 8 hours. It's definitely cooled down. When you first hop in your sleep system, it's nice and warm in there. The problem is I found though is that like as it gets colder throughout the night, and the coldest point of the night is just before sunrise, the Nalgene is fairly cool by then. If you're really in a pinch, you could boil some more water in the middle of the night and top this up. I didn't need to do it. It still kept me warm, and sometimes when I'd toss onto my side, there'd be below that draft, I'd just flip it over by my back, and I'd be right back to sleep. Yeah, Nalgene trick with inside a couple socks. Nice about the couple socks too, if you're to touch it, you're not gonna have boiling hot water right next to your skin. And plus, compared to like a smart water bottle, this is only 70 grams heavier for this particular one. And to get like an extra 5 degrees of temperature rating of your sleeping quilt with 950 full power down, it's gonna be another 100 grams for a step up. So this is actually a good heat to weight ratio because it's only 70 grams heavier than a smart water bottle. A little bit of ultralight bro science math there. Okay, so let's talk about my buffer layers. This layer I would bring with me while I'm in the backcountry, and it would be the clothes I'd use while I'm at camp, but not actively hiking around. So around my legs, I'm gonna have these down pants from Nature Hike. They're a really good deal. Paige has had them for a couple of years, and I've been wanting to pick them up, so I finally got a pair for myself, and they're very warm and very light. I personally don't need a whole lot around my legs, typically to keep me warm, but these pants are keep my legs nice and toasty. Also for around my feet, I have these really thick fleece kind of synthetic socks. I just picked them up from Canadian Tire, which they're like $10 and they're nice and toasty. If I had the money for it, I'd like to get Light and Equipment's Torrid booties and put those around my feet and bring those instead of these weird thick socks. Around my hands, I also have these Walmart fingerless mitten gloves. I'd like to get some sort of a true down mitten, but I haven't found anything that I'm really excited about, and they're quite pricey, honestly. And then there's my down jacket. If you recognize this jacket from Justin Outdoors, well, that'll be correct, because he was the one that introduced me to this jacket, and it seemed like a great one to get. It was, believe it or not, it was actually the cheapest jacket I could find. Decathlon has a really awesome jacket, but they didn't have my size for the longest time. I needed a double XL, and I actually found this jacket for a really good deal. It was only around $500 Canadian. This was actually a good budget jacket. Okay, be nice. Don't be mean. I know what I said was a little bit crazy, but I bought this jacket off some sketchy website and it ended up being cheap. Bob Leisure, I think. Yeah, it was a Canadian website, but it shipped from Germany. Nothing odd about that. But hey, it seems to be legit. And yes,
I love orange. KTM orange is the way to go. For shelter, I just had my trusty X-Med Pro 2 Plus. Since it's just a freestanding tent, you really have to make sure everything's staked out well. It's kind of settling in a little bit as the nights go on, and it snowed on it. The first night I did is I took a bunch of snow and packed it around the edge to add a little bit of insulation and trap any the wind coming in there. And then I just left it open a little bit around the door area. Worked good enough. The problem is, though, with packing stuff in along the sides, it kind of folds in the tent a bit. I'm sure I could probably guy it out in a certain way so it would give you a little bit more room, but my foot box was touching one end of the tent, and the other end, my head was very close to the edge. Now, that being said, I only have it staked out with 5 tent stakes right now, so I've had more tent stakes with guy out points. I'm sure I can get a lot tighter of a pitch, but the problem is... Problem is I flew out here and just brought everything in a carry-on bag. So I had to buy some cheap Walmart tent stakes I'm going to have to throw away after this. But I left the thermometer inside the tent and then the thermometer outside the tent. And it kept it roughly 5 degrees warmer each night. So yeah, it worked out quite well. Not your typical winter backpacking tent, but it worked good enough for me. Okay, so it's negative 30 out. Besides me absolutely blinding myself, I'm all wrapped up. So this is I've had a few nights outside of the tent so far. I got the sleep liner in, gloves, fleece base layer, and a polyester layer on top of that. So you got the regular sleep liner, down layer, synthetic layer up top, X-Med zipped up. So right now it's negative 30. Oh yeah, and for my face, just a thick fleece balaclava, both hoods on. I have my sun hoodie hood on, my Alpha Dracularia hood on, the toque. I'm gonna pull that down over top, cover my forehead. So we'll see how it goes tonight. Should be good. I got my puffy layers inside my jacket if I need it, if it gets really cold. It is nice and shiny inside the X-Med. All right, hardcore sleeping. Sorry for the constant scenery change. A lot of my camera gear was dying in negative 20 degree weather while I was filming, and I lost a lot of files. So we have to recap here now that I'm back home on the island. So let's recap the nights and how each night went, and I'll talk about how it was going. So for the first night, it only got down to negative 15 degrees Celsius. Now this is gonna be the coldest I've ever slept in before, and I wasn't too sure how it was going to go. The previously coldest temperature I slept in was negative 14 degrees Celsius. And I had a lot of stuff in my car. I just kind of threw it outside and then hopped inside my Lanshan tent. And that was quite a few years ago. So this is all totally new gear, and I wanted to see how everything was going to work together. So I combined the 2 quilts together and hopped in all my down clothes, including my buffering layer. And that was way too stinking hot. How I ended up sleeping was with the 2 top layers unsnapped and pulled down, and I only had the down layer laying on top of me. So for my top off my torso, my down layer was exposed and had the synthetic layer over top of it, and I was wearing my down jacket and then had my down hood around my head. The issue with that is that all the moisture from my body was accumulating inside the down layer, and by the morning I was quite cold and I had to cinch up everything on top of it, including with my down layers on, and just stuff wasn't performing well. So I realized with this sleep system, anything that's down has to be within the synthetic layer, or I'm going to run into frost issues and it's going to accumulate moisture within the down. It's going to lose a significant amount of loft. The down was flat and my quilt wasn't as full as it normally is when I woke up in the morning on the first night, and that was only negative 15 degrees Celsius. Then a couple days later, then it gets down to negative 27 degrees Celsius for the coldest temperature. That was cold. That was significantly colder than the last time I was in the tent, and it was, again, the coldest temperature I've ever slept in. For that, I had everything on, including my buffer layers, and then had everything cinched up. And one thing I noticed though is that I was getting quite hot, like way too hot. I was laying there for an hour and I could not fall asleep. I thought I was waiting for the coldness to set in, but I just wasn't cold at all. Now, so what I ended up having to do is strip off all my down layers, and because at that point I was only using the hood of my down jacket over my head. I took my fleece balaclava and the Walmart toque and all my other hoods and threw it over my head, and that was actually good enough. I was surprised I was able to stay warm. As I was tossing and turning around, I noticed I'd get cold spots on me. And then I had the hot water bottle. I kind of migrated the hot water bottle between my legs, up, down by my feet. And then when I lay on my sides, I'd usually put it by my back, kind of my kidneys area, and that kept me quite warm. And I got through that night and I was warm. It was negative 27 degrees, and then the coldest night we got down to negative 31.2. Now that was an interesting night. That night I had everything fairly dialed in, and I actually got a somewhat decent amount of sleep that night. So when I hopped into bed that night, I didn't put any of my down layers on and just started with the balaclava top over by my head. And that kept me warm enough. It was warm enough while the hot water bottle was hot all night, but then right around 9 o'clock in the morning when I woke up because I was too cold, but at that point I'd been in the sleep system for 8 hours and it was time to get up. It was 9 o'clock in the morning, the sun was already up and time to go hang out with everyone. But when I woke up because I was cold. I mean, at that point I was gonna get out of the tent, and what I could have done if I woke up in the middle of the night and I felt that cold, I could have tossed on my buffer layers, like my down jacket and all that, and I would have heated up quite well. So I believe with the combination of everything I've talked about in this video, if I combined everything together, I'd probably get down to -4 degrees Celsius. I'd like to test it out this winter, but I'm not too sure how realistic it is budget-wise, and because it's middle of January right now, and I've been in just like a t-shirt kind of filming all this B-roll here on Vancouver Island. So I'm gonna have to travel up north, and it's quite an expense to do that. But yeah, I'd really like to be able to do some testing out there. Now that I know I'm quite confident down to -31 degrees Celsius, so I could push it down that extra little bit to -40, that magical number, -40 degrees. That'd be so cool if I could do that, especially with only quilts. I should also talk about draft. Definitely from looking back on it, my top synthetic quilt needs to be an extra wide, not the regular width version. Help mitigate those drafts and keep everything nice and secure and warm underneath it. So as I was tossing and turning around, when I had everything cinched up, I noticed that just from the width of my shoulders, when I twist around, it would pull the fabric of the down layers with me, and then that would cause everything to lift as I rotated around. When I'm laying on my side, the bottom of my shoulder is touching the cinches. Even if I do one snap, it still touches along there. So when I twist, it pulls it with it, and that kind of causes the draft issue. When I sleep on a sleeping pad, not compared to when I'm at home, I wake up every time I have to turn around. I wake up every few hours just because I'm laying on a sleeping pad. It's not very comfortable for me. It kind of just is what it is. With these winter sleeping pads, they're not comfortable. What I'd also do to combat those drafts, I take the hot water bottle and put it on my back, near my kidneys, on my back, because that's usually where the drafts were. They weren't necessarily in my front, they'd be in my back from when I twist over. So I just toss a water bottle over there, and that'd warm me up and kind of mitigate all the draft issues. It's pretty intense sleeping in something when you're sleeping outside and that cold. It's not a great sleep, but I was able to sleep through the night. Good enough to know that, good enough when I was sleeping, I'd be able to go hang out with Paige's family and, you know, got me a good behavior. Her dad's the pastor, so I'm the guy who's dating the pastor's daughter, so gotta be somewhat on the ball and have my wits with me. Well, if you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe. Got lots of cool stuff coming up. I'm working on some backpacking solar videos right now and just a lot of other stuff. It's gonna be a really exciting year. If you made it to this far of the video, go wild down in the comments. I love to hear your feedback on my sleep system and what you do differently, especially in regards to the drafts and whatnot. Maybe a vapor barrier would have been a better option than using the synthetic layer over top. I don't know. A lot of stuff to think about. I really enjoy pushing my limits and seeing what I'm capable of physically and environmentally. I definitely thrive in those type 2 fun situations, so I really love doing this kind of stuff and testing my limits. If you guys enjoyed this video, don't give it a thumbs up. Still got a few more months left of winter, and I'm excited to do some more winter camping back on the island. If you want to see how my winter camping gears change, I have a really old video you might like, winter camping layering system from a few years ago. Not the best video ever, but it was kind of fun to look back on it.